bus driver stopped at an empty bus stop every day. A year later, a shocking truth came to light. The morning sun filtered through the grimy windows of the old bus, casting a warm glow over the worn leather seats. Sam, the driver, sat behind the wheel, his eyes fixed on the road ahead, his expression stoic and unreadable. This was his routine, a well-choreographed dance he had perfected over the years. The same route, the same stops, the same faces, day in and day out. As the bus rolled through the sleepy streets of the small Midwestern town, Sam's gaze occasionally drifted to the rear-view mirror, observing the handful of passengers who had boarded. They were regulars, familiar faces he had come to recognize. The elderly woman with the knitted shawl, the young mother juggling a squirming toddler, the high school student engrossed in a worn paperback. Sam nodded to them in silent acknowledgement, his lips barely parting, as if speaking would somehow disrupt the delicate balance of his world. The bus rumbled on, passing by the familiar landmarks, the diner with its fading neon sign, the hardware store with its cluttered window displays, the abandoned factory that had once been the heart of the town's industry. Sam's eyes, however, were drawn to a single spot on the horizon, a dilapidated bus stop that stood alone, its weathered bench and rusted shelter a stark contrast to the otherwise well-maintained streets. As the bus approached the stop, Sam's grip on the steering wheel tightened, his knuckles turning white. He slowed the vehicle to a crawl, his gaze fixed on the empty bench, as if he were waiting for someone to materialize there. But no one ever did. The stop remained vacant, a silent witness to Sam's daily ritual. The passengers shifted in their seats, some casting curious glances at the driver, others lost in their own thoughts. Sam's jaw tightened, and for a brief moment, a flicker of emotion crossed his features, a shadow of pain, a glimmer of regret. But just as quickly as it had appeared, it vanished, replaced by the familiar mask of indifference. With a deep breath, Sam pressed the accelerator, the bus lurching forward, leaving the empty bus stop behind. The passengers resumed their quiet conversations, unaware of the weight that Sam carried with each passing day. As the bus wound its way through the town, Sam's mind drifted, his thoughts consumed by the ghosts of the past. He could still see the smiling face of his child, the laughter that had once filled the air, the warmth of a tiny hand in his own. But those memories were now shrouded in darkness, buried beneath the layers of grief and guilt that had become his constant companions. The bus reached the final stop, and the passengers began to disembark, their chatter filling the air. Sam watched them go, his eyes scanning the faces, searching for something he knew he would never find. With a heavy sigh, he put the bus in gear and headed back to the depot, his routine once again complete. As he drove, Sam couldn't help but wonder how many more times he would repeat this ritual, this endless cycle of arriving and departing, of watching and waiting. The emptiness of the bus stop had become a mirror to his own soul, a reflection of the void that had taken root within him. But deep within, a glimmer of hope remained, a faint spark that refused to be extinguished. Perhaps, one day, the silence would be broken, and the weight of his sorrow would finally be lifted. For now, though, Sam would continue his daily dance, a solitary figure in a world that seemed to move on without him. Lily Winters had just moved to the small Midwestern town, eager to uncover its hidden stories. As a journalist, she was always on the hunt for compelling narratives that could captivate her readers. The quiet streets and unassuming storefronts of this unremarkable town had initially seemed unremarkable, but Lily's keen eye had already spotted a peculiar detail that piqued her curiosity. Every day, as she waited at the bus stop on her way to the local newspaper office, Lily couldn't help but notice the bus driver, Sam, and his strange ritual. Without fail, he would pull up to the dilapidated shelter, his eyes scanning the empty bench before continuing on his route. Lily had observed this routine for a week, and each time she found herself more intrigued by the man's stoic demeanor and the mysteries surrounding the abandoned stop. One morning, as Lily stood shivering at the bus stop, the familiar rumble of the bus engine caught her attention. She watched as Sam approached, his eyes fixed straight ahead, his expression unreadable. Gathering her courage, Lily stepped forward as the bus slowed to a halt, determined to uncover the truth behind this peculiar behavior. "Excuse me," Lily said, her voice clear and confident as she boarded the bus. "I've noticed you stop at that empty bus stop every day. Is there a reason for that?" Sam's eyes flickered briefly in her direction, and for a moment Lily thought she saw a flicker of unease in his gaze. "It's on my route," he replied simply, his tone flat and devoid of emotion. Undeterred, Lily pressed on. "But the stop is abandoned. No one ever gets on or off there. Is there a story behind it?" Sam's grip tightened on the steering wheel, his knuckles turning white. "I'm just doing my job," he said, his voice gruff and unyielding. Lily sensed that she had struck a nerve, but she refused to back down. "I'm a journalist, you see," she continued, her eyes fixed on Sam's profile. "I'm always on the lookout for interesting stories, and this one has piqued my curiosity. Would you be willing to share more about it?" For a moment, Sam remained silent, his jaw clenched as if he were weighing his words carefully. Lily could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he seemed to withdraw into himself. Just as she was about to give up, he spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "There's nothing to tell," he said, his eyes trained on the road ahead. "It's just a stop on my route." Lily frowned, sensing that there was more to the story than Sam was willing to reveal. She opened her mouth to press him further, but the bus had reached her stop, and the other passengers were already filing off. With a resigned sigh, Lily stepped off the bus, her mind racing with questions. As she made her way to the newspaper office, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that there was something deeper behind Sam's enigmatic behavior. She knew she had to find a way to break through his stoic facade and uncover the truth. Over the next few days, Lily began to immerse herself in the town, speaking with the locals and gathering information about its history. She visited the local library, poring over old newspapers and records, searching for any clues that might shed light on the mystery of the abandoned bus stop. One afternoon, as Lily was browsing the shelves, she stumbled upon an elderly man, Mr. Thompson, who seemed to be a fixture in the community. Sensing an opportunity, Lily approached him, introducing herself and explaining her interest in the town's history. "Ah, yes, I've noticed you around," Mr. Thompson said, his eyes crinkling with a warm smile. "You're the new journalist, aren't you? I've heard you've been asking a lot of questions about our little town." Lily nodded, her expression earnest. "Yes, that's right. I'm particularly intrigued by the abandoned bus stop on Main Street. Do you happen to know anything about its history?" Mr. Thompson's expression shifted, a flicker of something unreadable passing across his face. "The bus stop, you say?" he murmured, his voice tinged with a hint of melancholy. "That's a story that's been buried for a long time, my dear." Lily leaned in, her eyes widening with anticipation. "I'd love to hear more, if you're willing to share. Anything you can tell me would be incredibly helpful." Mr. Thompson sighed, his gaze drifting towards the window as if he were lost in thought. "Well, I suppose it's about time the truth came to light," he said, his voice low and contemplative. That bus stop, you see, it holds a deep connection to the town's history and to the life of a man who's been carrying a heavy burden for far too long. Lily listened intently, her pen poised over her notebook, as Mr. Thompson began to weave a tale of loss, grief, and the enduring resilience of a community that had been scarred by a tragic event. As the elderly man's words unfolded, Lily felt a growing sense of empathy and understanding. She realized that the mystery of the abandoned bus stop was not just a story about one man's peculiar behavior, but a reflection of the town's collective pain and the ways in which it had shaped the lives of its residents. Thanking Mr. Thompson for his time and insight, Lily left the library with a renewed determination to uncover the truth. She knew that the answers she sought were not just about the bus stop, but about the hidden stories that lay beneath the surface of this seemingly ordinary town. With a newfound sense of purpose, Lily made her way back to the bus stop, her eyes scanning the familiar surroundings, searching for any clues that might help her piece together the puzzle. As she waited, the rumble of the bus engine signaled Sam's approach, and Lily steeled herself for another encounter with the enigmatic driver. This time, as Sam pulled up to the empty shelter, Lily stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. "Mr. Thompson told me about the history of this bus stop," she said, her voice soft but resolute. "I'd like to hear your side of the story if you're willing to share it." Sam's eyes widened briefly, a flash of emotion crossing his features before he quickly schooled his expression. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, his tone guarded. Lily shook her head, her expression earnest. "Please, Sam, I know there's more to this than you're letting on. I want to understand, to help you if I can." For a long moment, Sam remained silent, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. Lily could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he seemed to be wrestling with an internal conflict. Just when she was about to give up, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's a long story," he said, his gaze finally meeting Lily's. "One I haven't told anyone in a very long time." Lily nodded, her expression understanding. "I'm listening," she said, her voice gentle. And so, with a deep breath, Sam began to share the haunting tale of his past, a story that would forever change the way Lily viewed the town and its inhabitants. The morning light filtered through the grimy windows of the aging bus as Sam navigated the familiar streets of the small town. Glancing in the rearview mirror, he caught glimpses of the regular passengers, the elderly woman clutching her worn purse, the teenage boy with his headphones blaring, the middle-aged man reading the local newspaper. Their faces had become as familiar to Sam as the route itself, a steady backdrop to the routine that had defined his life for the past decade. Yet as the bus approached the dilapidated bus stop, Sam felt a familiar tightness in his chest. The empty bench, overgrown with weeds, seemed to mock him, a constant reminder of the gaping hole in his life. He slowed the bus, his eyes scanning the area for any sign of a waiting passenger, but the stop remained stubbornly vacant. Letting out a soft sigh, Sam pulled the bus to a stop and opened the doors, even though he knew no one would board. It was a ritual he had performed countless times, a silent acknowledgement of a loss he could never fully articulate. As the bus idled, the only sound of the gentle hum of the engine, Sam allowed his gaze to linger on the worn bench, his mind drifting back to a time when it had been a place of joy and anticipation. Lily Winters watched the scene unfold from her seat near the front of the bus, her brow furrowed in contemplation. She had been riding this route for the past few weeks, ever since she had moved to the town, and the bus driver's peculiar behavior had piqued her curiosity. Each day, without fail, Sam would slow the bus and stop at the abandoned stop, even though no one ever got on or off. Lily had tried to engage Sam in conversation, but the driver had rebuffed her attempts, his responses curt and evasive. She could sense the weight of his sorrow, the way his shoulders seemed to sag under an invisible burden, and it only fueled her determination to uncover the truth. As the bus pulled away from the stop, Lily made a mental note to speak with some of the other passengers to see if they might shed light on the driver's strange ritual. Perhaps one of the regulars would know more about the history of the bus stop or the reasons behind Sam's unwavering devotion to it. Later that day, Lily found herself in the town's small library, scouring the archives for any information that might help her piece together the puzzle. She pored over old newspaper clippings, searching for any mention of the bus stop or the driver, but the records were sparse, offering little insight into the town's past. Just as Lily was about to give up, her eyes landed on a faded photograph tucked into the corner of a yellowed newspaper article. It showed a group of smiling children gathered around a brightly painted bus stop, their faces alight with joy. Lily's heart skipped a beat as she recognized the familiar structure in the background, now overgrown and neglected. Carefully extracting the clipping, Lily scanned the accompanying text, her fingers trembling with anticipation. The article was dated nearly 2 decades ago, and it described a community celebration to mark the opening of a new bus stop, a project spearheaded by a local family. Lily's breath caught in her throat as she read the names of the family members, a husband and wife, and their young son. The boy's face, beaming with excitement, was eerily familiar, and Lily felt a chill run down her spine as she realized the connection to Sam's daily ritual. Clutching the clipping, Lily hurried out of the library, her mind racing with questions. She knew she had to find a way to speak with Sam again, to unravel the mystery that had been haunting him for all these years. As the bus pulled up to the familiar stop, Lily steeled herself, determined to get to the bottom of the story. When Sam opened the doors, she stepped forward, her gaze meeting his. "Mr. Walters," she said, her voice soft but unwavering, "I think we need to talk." Sam's eyes widened, and for a moment Lily saw a flicker of panic in their depths. But just as quickly, his expression hardened, and he shook his head. "I don't know what you're talking about," he muttered, his hands tightening on the steering wheel. Lily took a deep breath, knowing that she had to tread carefully. "I've been doing some research, and I think I've found something that might help explain your connection to this bus stop." Sam's jaw clenched, and Lily could see the muscles in his neck tense. "I don't have any connection to this place," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I think you do," Lily pressed on, her hand reaching into her bag to retrieve the newspaper clipping. "I found this in the library, and it seems to suggest that this bus stop was once the center of a community celebration. A family was involved in its creation, and their son was one of the children pictured." Sam's eyes darted to the clipping, and Lily saw a flicker of recognition in his gaze. But just as quickly he turned away, his expression hardening once more. "It was a long time ago," he said, his voice barely audible. "It doesn't matter anymore." Lily could feel her heart pounding in her chest as she watched the driver's reaction. She knew she was treading on delicate ground, but she also couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story than Sam was willing to share. "Mr. Walters, I understand that this is painful for you," she said, her voice gentle. "But I believe there's more to this than you're willing to tell me. I think the town has a right to know the truth, and I think you might find some peace in sharing your story." Sam's eyes flashed with a mixture of emotions: grief, anger, and a deep abiding sorrow. For a moment, Lily thought he might lash out, but instead he let out a long, shaky breath. "You have no idea what you're asking," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The truth, it's not something anyone wants to hear." Lily felt a surge of empathy for the man, and she reached out, gently placing her hand on his arm. "Maybe not, but I think it's time for the town to confront its past, and I think you might be the one to help us do that." Sam stared at her for a long moment, his eyes searching her face for any sign of judgment or pity. But all Lily could see was a deep well of compassion and a genuine desire to understand. Slowly, Sam nodded, his shoulders sagging with the weight of a burden he had carried for far too long. "All right," he said, his voice barely audible. "I'll tell you what I know." Lily leaned in, her heart pounding with anticipation, as Sam began to speak. The morning sun peeked through the grimy windows of the bus as Sam maneuvered the familiar route, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. The rhythmic hum of the engine and the occasional chatter of his passengers provided a comforting backdrop to the solitude he felt behind the wheel. As the bus approached the dilapidated stop, Sam's grip tightened on the steering wheel. He knew what was waiting for him: the empty bench, the overgrown weeds, and the faded sign that once promised a connection to the rest of the town. Pulling the bus to a gentle stop, Sam's gaze lingered on the desolate scene, his mind drifting to the memories that had become so deeply etched within him. Lily Winter stood at the bus stop, her eyes trained on Sam's face, searching for any sign of emotion. She had been waiting for this moment, determined to unravel the mystery that surrounded the bus driver and the abandoned shelter. As the bus doors swung open, Lily stepped forward, her voice cutting through the stillness. "Good morning, Sam. I was hoping I'd catch you here." Sam's eyes flickered with a hint of surprise, but his expression remained guarded. "Miss Winters," he acknowledged, his tone measured and devoid of warmth. "What brings you to this stop today?" Lily took a deep breath, her determination unwavering. "I've been doing some research, Sam, and I can't help but notice your routine. You stop here every day, even though no one ever gets on or off. I'm curious, what is it about this particular spot that keeps drawing you back?" Sam's jaw tightened, and for a moment, Lily thought he might simply ignore her question and close the bus doors. But instead, he let out a heavy sigh and turned to face her. "This stop," he began, his voice low and gruff. "It's a reminder of a time when things were different, when this town was a different place." Lily leaned in, her eyes filled with a mixture of curiosity and empathy. "A reminder of what, Sam?" The bus driver's gaze drifted to the weathered bench, his fingers tracing the peeling paint. "A reminder of what I've lost," he murmured, the words barely audible. Sensing the weight of Sam's words, Lily hesitated, unsure of how to proceed. She had expected resistance, perhaps even outright hostility, but the vulnerability in his tone caught her off guard. Deciding to tread carefully, she took a step closer. "I'm sorry, Sam. I can see this place means a lot to you. If you don't mind me asking, what happened here? What did you lose?" For a long moment, Sam remained silent, his eyes fixed on the empty bus stop. Lily waited patiently, understanding that whatever he was about to share was clearly a painful part of his past. Finally, Sam spoke, his voice tinged with a raw emotion that Lily had never heard from him before. "It was years ago, back when this town was a different place. There used to be a family that would wait here, a mother and her young son. They'd be here every morning, waiting for the bus to take them to work and school. Lily listened intently, her heart sinking as she realized the direction Sam's story was headed. They were good people, the kind that everyone in this town knew and cared about. The boy, he was a bright, curious child, always asking questions and exploring the world around him. Sam paused, his gaze growing distant. One day, they never showed up. The bus came and went, and the stop remained empty. Lily's breath caught in her throat as the realization dawned on her. What happened to them, Sam? Sam's eyes glistened with unshed tears. They were hit by a car just a block away from this very spot. The mother died instantly, and the boy... His voice trailed off, the unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. Lily felt a profound sadness wash over her. "Oh, Sam, I'm so sorry." "I had no idea." The bus driver nodded, his fingers tracing the worn wood of the bench. "That's why I stop here every day, Miss Winters, to remember them, to keep their memory alive. This was their spot, their connection to the world, and I can't bear to see it abandoned." This place, Lily reached out, her hand resting gently on Sam's arm. "I understand now, Sam. This place, it's a memorial to them, a way for you to hold on to what you've lost." Sam's gaze met Lily's, and for a moment, the walls he had so carefully constructed seemed to crumble. "Yes," he whispered, the weight of his grief evident in the single word. Lily felt a deep empathy for the man before her, this stoic bus driver who had been carrying the burden of a tragic loss for so many years. She wanted to offer him comfort, to let him know that he was not alone in his grief. "But you don't have to anymore. If you're willing, I'd like to hear more about them, about the life you shared with that family. I want to understand, to honor their memory alongside you." Sam's eyes widened, a flicker of vulnerability crossing his features. For a long moment, he remained silent, his gaze searching Lily's face. Then, with a deep breath, he began to speak, his words flowing with a raw honesty that Lily had never heard from him before. As Sam's story unfolded, Lily listened intently, her heart aching for the loss he had endured. She learned about the vibrant young boy who had once filled the empty bus stop with laughter and curiosity, and the devoted mother who had cherished every moment with her son. Sam's memories painted a vivid picture of a family that had been the heart of the community, their warmth and kindness leaving an indelible mark on all who knew them. Lily's eyes glistened with tears as Sam's voice faltered, the weight of his grief evident in every word. She reached out, her hand grasping his, and squeezed it gently, offering a silent gesture of support and understanding. In that moment, the barriers that had once separated Sam and Lily began to crumble. The bus driver, who had so carefully guarded his emotions, found himself opening up to this stranger, pouring out the pain that had been his constant companion for so many years. As the last of Sam's words faded into the stillness, Lily knew that this was a pivotal moment, a turning point in their relationship and in the town's history. She had glimpsed the true depth of Sam's sorrow, and in doing so, had gained a deeper understanding of the hidden stories that lay buried within the fabric of this community. Clearing her throat, Lily spoke, her voice soft and filled with empathy. "Sam, thank you for sharing this with me. I can't imagine how difficult it must have been to carry this burden all these years, but I want you to know that you're not alone anymore. I'm here, and I'll do whatever I can to help you honor their memory and find the peace you deserve." Sam's gaze met Lily's, and in that moment a glimmer of hope flickered in his eyes, a silent acknowledgement of the connection they had forged. The bus driver nodded, his expression softening, and for the first time Lily saw the man behind the stoic facade, a man who had endured unimaginable loss, but still clung to the possibility of healing. As the bus idled, the two stood in a weighted silence, the weight of their shared understanding hanging in the air. Lily knew that this was just the beginning, that the road ahead would be long and difficult, but she was determined to walk it alongside Sam, to help him confront his past and find the solace he so desperately needed. With a deep breath, Lily stepped back, her hand lingering on Sam's arm. "I'll be here, Sam, whenever you're ready to talk more. Until then, take care of yourself and know that you're not alone in this." Sam nodded, his eyes conveying a silent gratitude that words could not express. As Lily turned and made her way down the street, the bus driver watched her go, a glimmer of hope flickering in his heart, a promise that the future might hold the possibility of redemption. The morning sun peeked through the dusty windows of the bus, casting a warm glow on the worn leather seats. Sam gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles turning white as he approached the familiar intersection. He knew what was coming next. The dilapidated bus stop, the one he had been stopping at for years despite the lack of passengers. As the bus slowed to a crawl, Sam's gaze drifted to the empty bench, its peeling paint a silent testament to the passage of time. He felt the weight of Lily's curious eyes upon him, but he refused to look her way, unwilling to acknowledge the questions that burned within her. Suddenly, a movement in the corner of his eye caught his attention. There on the bench sat the familiar figure of Mr. Thompson, the town's wise and weathered elder. Sam felt his heart skip a beat, wondering what the old man could possibly be doing there. The bus came to a stop, and Sam watched as Mr. Thompson rose from his seat, his cane tapping against the cracked pavement. Slowly, the old man made his way to the bus door, his eyes meeting Sam's through the rearview mirror. "Mind if I join you, son?" Mr. Thompson asked, his voice soft and measured. Sam hesitated, his instinct to maintain his solitude warring with the unexpected presence of the man who had, over the years, become a fixture in the town's collective memory. After a moment's pause, he nodded, his lips pressed into a thin line. As Mr. Thompson settled into the seat beside him, Sam felt a familiar tension creep into his muscles. He knew that the old man's appearance at the bus stop was no coincidence, and he braced himself for the questions that were sure to come. "It's been a while since I've been on this bus," Mr. Thompson said, his gaze sweeping over the familiar surroundings. "Brings back memories, you know." Sam remained silent, his eyes fixed on the road ahead, his mind racing with 1,000 unspoken thoughts. "You know, I've been watching you, Sam," Mr. Thompson continued, his voice tinged with a hint of sorrow. "Watching you stop at this empty bus stop day after day, year after year. I've always wondered what it is that keeps you coming back." Sam's grip on the steering wheel tightened, his knuckles turning white. He knew that he couldn't avoid this conversation any longer, that the weight of his past had finally caught up with him. "I lost my son, you know," Mr. Thompson said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It was a long time ago, but the pain never really goes away, does it?" Sam felt his breath catch in his throat, the memories of his own loss threatening to overwhelm him. He had tried so hard to bury that part of his life, to keep it hidden from the world, but now it seemed that the truth was about to be laid bare. "I know what it's like to carry that kind of grief, Sam," Mr. Thompson continued, his hand reaching out to rest on Sam's arm. "It's a burden that can feel impossible to bear, but you don't have to carry it alone." Sam felt the walls he had so carefully constructed begin to crumble, and he knew that he could no longer hide from the truth. Slowly, he turned to face Mr. Thompson, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I lost my son, too," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "He was just a boy, so full of life and promise. And then, one day, he was gone, and I—" His voice trailed off, the weight of his words hanging heavy in the air. Mr. Thompson nodded, his own eyes reflecting the pain that Sam had carried for so long. "I know, son. I know." The two men sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared grief palpable in the confines of the bus. Sam could feel the tension in his shoulders beginning to ease, as if a great burden had been lifted from his soul. Suddenly, a movement in the rearview mirror caught his eye, and he realized that Lily had been watching the exchange, her own eyes filled with a mixture of empathy and understanding. Sam knew that he could no longer hide from the truth, that the time had come to confront the demons of his past. With a deep breath, he turned to face Lily, his expression softening. "I think it's time I told you the whole story," he said, his voice steady and resolute. The early morning light filtered through the grimy windows of Sam's bus, casting a muted glow on the empty seats. As he navigated the familiar streets, his eyes were drawn to the dilapidated bus stop that had become a fixture in his daily routine. Today, however, the sight of it stirred a different emotion within him, a mix of dismay and a new focus that felt limited only by her presence. She inspired in him emotional resolve. In the rearview mirror, Sam caught a glimpse of Lily, the young journalist who had been persistently inquiring about his connection to this particular bus stop. Her eyes were fixed on him, a silent invitation for him to open up and share the truth he had guarded so fiercely. After his conversation with Mr. Thompson the day before, Sam felt a shift within him. The elderly man's words had struck a chord, reminding him of the weight he had been carrying alone for far too long. Perhaps it was time to let go of the burden, to finally confront the ghosts of his past and find a path towards healing. As the bus rolled to a stop, Sam took a deep breath and turned to face Lily. "I think it's time I told you what happened," he said, his voice low and tinged with emotion. Lily leaned forward, her expression one of quiet understanding. "I'm listening." Sam's fingers tightened around the steering wheel, and for a moment he struggled to find the words. But the memory of his son's smile, the warmth of his embrace, and the devastating loss that followed all came flooding back, demanding to be heard. "It was a long time ago," he began, his gaze fixed on the empty bus stop outside. "My wife, Sarah, and our son, Ethan, used to wait for me here every day. Ethan loved watching the buses come and go, and he'd wave to the other passengers as they boarded." Lily remained silent, her eyes never leaving Sam's face, as he continued. "We were a happy family, you know. Sarah and I had been through our share of ups and downs, but Ethan was the light that kept us going. He was only 7 years old when—" Sam's voice trailed off, the weight of the unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. "What happened?" Lily asked gently, sensing the need to guide Sam through the painful recollection. Sam swallowed hard, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "There was an accident. A car ran the red light and—" He paused, taking a shaky breath. "Sarah and Ethan were crossing the street to get to the bus stop. They never made it." Lily felt a pang of empathy as she watched the anguish wash over Sam's face. She reached out and placed a comforting hand on his arm, silently urging him to continue. "I was driving the bus that day," Sam said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I saw it all happen, but I couldn't do anything to stop it. I tried, Lily, I tried so hard, but—" He shook his head, the memory of that fateful day still haunting him. Lily felt her own eyes sting with tears as she listened to Sam's story. "I'm so sorry," she murmured, her heart breaking for the man who had been carrying this burden alone for so long. Sam nodded, his gaze fixed on the empty bus stop. "After that, I couldn't bring myself to stop here anymore, but somehow I found myself drawn back to this place, like a ritual to keep their memory alive. Every day I stop and look at that empty bench, and I remember them." Lily's hand tightened around Sam's arm, offering silent support. "And the town? What happened after the accident?" Sam sighed heavily. "The town was devastated. Sarah and Ethan were beloved by everyone. We had a small, close-knit community, and their loss was felt by all, but no one knew how to help me, how to ease the pain. So they just avoided it." "Avoided me?" Lily's brow furrowed with understanding. "That's why the bus stop is always empty. The town has been avoiding the pain, just like you have." Sam nodded, his eyes downcast. I couldn't bear to see the pity in their eyes, the awkward silences whenever I passed by. So I retreated into my routine, into the solace of driving this bus day in and day out. Lily's heart ached for the man sitting before her, the weight of his grief etched into every line of his face. "But you're not alone, Sam. The town, they've been carrying this burden too, haven't they?" Sam lifted his gaze, meeting Lily's empathetic eyes. "I think you're right. Mr. Thompson, he tried to reach out, to get me to copen up, but I couldn't. I was too afraid of facing the truth, of confronting the pain that I knew was shared by everyone in this town." Lily nodded, understanding dawning on her. "That's why you're going to tell your story, Sam, not just to me, but to the whole community. It's time to break the silence and heal together." Sam's eyes widened, a flicker of fear and uncertainty crossing his features. "I don't know if I can, Lily. It's been so long and the pain is still so raw." Lily squeezed his arm reassuringly. "You can, Sam, and the town, they need to hear it. They need to know that they're not alone in their grief, that you've been carrying this burden too. Together, you can all start to heal." Sam's gaze shifted to the empty bus stop, the weight of his decision palpable. After a long moment, he turned back to Lily, a glimmer of resolve in his eyes. "All right, I'll do it. I'll tell my story, and I'll ask the town to do the same. It's time we faced this together." Lily smiled, a sense of hope blossoming within her. "I'll be there with you, Sam. We'll do this, one step at a time." As the bus pulled away from the familiar stop, Sam felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of light breaking through the darkness. With Lily's support and the town's willingness to confront their shared pain, he knew that the path to healing was within reach. The morning sun cast a warm glow over the small town, as if nature itself was preparing the community for a pivotal moment. Sam stood at the familiar bus stop, his calloused hands gripping the steering wheel, his eyes fixed on the empty bench. Today was different, though. Today, he would break the silence that had enveloped him for so long. Lily arrived at the bus stop, her notebook in hand, ready to bear witness to Sam's story. She had spent countless hours researching the town's history, piecing together the fragments of a tragedy that had haunted its residents for years. Now the time had come for the truth to be told. As the bus pulled up, Sam took a deep breath and turned to face Lily. "I'm ready," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The two of them stepped off the bus and made their way to the town hall, where a small crowd had gathered. Mr. Thompson stood at the entrance, a gentle smile on his weathered face. "I'm glad you're here, Sam," he said, placing a hand on the bus driver's shoulder. "It's time." Inside, the room was filled with familiar faces, the regular passengers, the local business owners, and other members of the community. They all turned their attention to Sam as he took his place at the front, Lily standing beside him. Sam cleared his throat, his eyes scanning the crowd. "For too long, I've kept my story to myself, afraid to face the pain and the guilt that has consumed me." He paused, his gaze settling on the empty bus stop, visible through the window. "But today, I'm ready to share what happened, not just for my own healing, but for all of us." Lily placed a reassuring hand on Sam's arm, silently encouraging him to continue. "It was a beautiful day, just like this one," he began, his voice trembling. "Sarah and Ethan were waiting for me at the bus stop, excited to go to the town fair. They were laughing and talking, full of life." Tears glistened in Sam's eyes as the memories flooded back. "I saw the truck coming, but I couldn't stop it. The impact was so sudden, so devastating." He closed his eyes, the images of that fateful day searing into his mind. "I lost them both in an instant, and I've been living with that guilt ever since." The room was silent save for the occasional sniffle as the townspeople grappled with the weight of Sam's words. Lily stepped forward, her own eyes shining with empathy. "Sam, I'm so sorry. I can't imagine the pain you've been carrying all these years." Sam nodded, his gaze sweeping across the faces of the people he had driven for so long, yet never truly known. "I thought that if I just kept to my routine, if I just kept driving the bus, I could outrun the grief. But it was always there, haunting me, reminding me of what I lost." He paused, his fingers tracing the edge of the podium. "And I know I wasn't the only one who lost someone that day. The town has been carrying this burden, this shared grief, for far too long." A murmur rippled through the crowd as the townspeople realized the depth of their collective pain. Mr. Thompson stepped forward, his eyes shining with understanding. "We've all been so caught up in our own sorrow that we forgot to lean on each other, but today we have the chance to heal together." Sam turned to face the crowd, his voice steadier now. "I know it won't be easy, but I'm ready to let go of the guilt and the shame. I want to honor the memory of Sarah and Ethan, and I want to help this community find its way back to hope." Lily nodded, her pen poised over her notebook. "Sam, your story is powerful, and it deserves to be heard. With your permission, I would like to share it so that others may find the courage to confront their own grief and find the path to healing." Sam considered her words, a glimmer of something akin to relief flickering in his eyes. "Yes, Lily, share our story so that we may all find the strength to move forward." The room erupted in a swell of applause, the townspeople rising to their feet, their faces etched with a newfound sense of understanding and solidarity. Sam scanned the crowd, his gaze settling on the empty bus stop outside, and for the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of hope. As the gathering came to a close, Lily approached Sam, her expression filled with a mixture of admiration and compassion. Thank you for sharing your story, Sam. I know it wasn't easy, but I believe it will make a profound difference in this community." Sam nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I hope so, Lily. I hope that by confronting our shared grief, we can finally start to heal." The two of them stepped outside, where the sun was beginning to set, casting a warm glow over the town. Sam turned to Lily, his eyes filled with a newfound sense of purpose. "You know, I think I'm ready to start a new routine, one that's not defined by the weight of the past, but by the promise of the future." Lily grinned, her notebook tucked safely under her arm. "I can't wait to see what that looks like, Sam. I have a feeling it's going to be something special." As they walked away from the bus stop, the town seemed to hum with a renewed energy. The residents already beginning to come together, their shared stories and experiences now a foundation for a brighter tomorrow.